Serena Murillo not being here yet. We'll start off by reading one of, we'll go with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for one nation, under God, indivisible, with justice for all.
We salute the flag of New Mexico,
the state of New Mexico,
the Zia symbol of perfect friendship among united cultures. Okay, now we'll read, we'll take turns reading the board norms, and we'll start on the left-hand side there with Dr. Spalletta.
So number one, actively listen to all perspectives.
Number two, close the loop, responding to concerns and questions as a unified board.
Number three, model the professionalism that we expect for from all members and of the district and the community, and customer service oriented.
Assume positive intent.
And be positive and responsive.
Okay. So we have agenda items that are, one, the approval of agenda item. The second one is review for proposal for attorney counsel. We also have an executive session, but right now we'll take public input for any items on the agenda. Victor, do you have any? Hey, then. Okay, about yourself. Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to approval of agenda items. Superintendent has one concern.
Just a request that we remove 5 and 6 on the agenda.
You mean 5 and 6?
5 and 6, yes.
Okay. And the reason for that?
The wording and just some of the information in that. So I did send everybody that information to review, and I'll let you know about anything in the future.
And that observation was brought to our attention by council, by Wells Gallegos' council, and so we're following that advice and moving that on to another agenda.
Yes.
Okay, so I would then take a motion to proceed with just item 3B on our agenda as action item.
We want to approve the agenda as it is.
Nope, we're going to approve it with only 3B being the action item.
So I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda for only to only have the action item of 3B.
Actually, that's okay. Actually, I stated that wrong. It's 3A and B.
Sorry. So I make a motion to amend the agenda to only have the action items 3A and B.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, seconded. Hey, Serena made it just under the wire. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Nobody in opposition, so the motion passes. So the motion is to proceed then with item B, which is the review of the proposal for attorney counsel. We had intent, it was our goal to have solicited an RFP and received responses so that we could act on them at this point. But I was informed that the RFP process would be much longer than what could materialize in getting any responses by this time. So alternatively, we looked at a very viable option, which is one that is already under contract with us, and that is Welch and Gallegos. They are used by, we do have a contract with them. It's largely used for special education, but it isn't restricted to that. And it's well within the parameters, and they are very willing to do the work of providing us a representation in response to complaints filed to the Attorney General's office. They have submitted their packages to all the board members. And they do give an estimate of what the fees could be. And there are 3 complaints that are being looked at from the Attorney General's office, as well as one letter, a demand letter that has been submitted recently. And this review will include representation for all 3. And the response for Attorney General complaint number 1 is they estimate it will take 10 to 25 hours, and that is largely because it's revising a response that has already been submitted, but that was submitted without our approval. So there's going to be additional work that is going to be done to complete that response, and we've received an extension from the Attorney General's for doing so. Same thing with the second one, as far as having received an extension from the Attorney General's office. A response has not been submitted yet. So they estimate that it's going to take between 25 and 60 hours to complete the investigation, write it up, and then submit it to the Attorney General's office. Regarding the student matter, the fee they estimate to be $2,150. And that is not an issue that is going to the court at this point. This is just a correspondence that will be generated to respond to the attorney's request. And with that, I would like to entertain a motion to approve the services recommended, the services presented by Welch Gallegos to proceed with responding to the Attorney General's office and the lawyer's request. Can I have a motion?
Can we have some
Or is there
discussion?
discussion? I'm sorry. Yes, discussion.
So is this for the sole purpose of these 3 complaints that they're going to represent the district?
Yes, that will be looked at in terms of, I'm sorry, that is for, in this particular time, it is related just to this. And that's because the agenda drives it to be that. We can go forward without any other consideration with using them in any manner that we find necessary, because they do have a contract with us. Excuse me. They do have a contract with us, and it wouldn't be necessary to go for an RFP. We at some point can decide if we want to go for an RFP to contract out all the services, or we can simply remain with them because they are in place.
Okay.
So that's been
Mr. President, so we don't have to approve this, that we already have a contract with them. We don't have to, it's just reviewing this. We don't have to vote on approving this. This is, we're reviewing, because we already have a contract with them.
And to make that kind of a little bit clearer, the policy number 198, Cobre Consolidated School Policy 198 requires consultations to be reviewed by the board, including those of legal services. And so the purpose of this meeting is to comply with that particular requirement, and that is for the board to review and to be presented with the costs, the time frame, and the time frame that actually isn't documented in this, but it's driven actually by the Attorney General's office, and that is, I believe, the 22nd.
So they have given us an extension until the 24th.
Okay, so that's the time frame. She provided information about their history in doing responses to this. So in that, I should ask if there is not any objection, we'll go forward and proceed with allowing them to do our response.
I do have an objection. Can we not provide documentation? Can we create our own response to the Attorney General complaint?
So Walsh and Gallegos is going to do an investigation. They're going to be here on Monday to do an investigation and get everybody's input.
And that's if we approve this.
Well,
or we're doing it no matter, because I object to it. So complaint number 2 was my complaint that I submitted regarding Open Meetings Act. And I'm just curious if it's not sufficient to provide the Attorney General with the 2 documents that were discussed in closed session, which I believe should not have been discussed in closed session. and have the Attorney General come to a conclusion? Because, I mean, so it's gonna be $12,000, and we have the documentation of the two opinions that were discussed in closed session.
$12,000. Oh, okay, that one. If I could respond, and the estimate is because there isn't any work, and although I see that the work that's been done in the first one is really almost going to be thrown out entirely and redone, and I think the scope of the second one is much smaller. It is only, and I think it will be much closer to the $5,000. But that aside, one of the big advantages of having the council is that both Serena and I are authors of the complaints. And the first complaint is mine, and it related to conflict of nepotism, and then also the president of the board allowing that to go forward, knowing that it was a violation of our policy. The second one is the Open Meetings Act, and the big advantage I find of going with the attorneys is that it's not being, the documentation that we're going to present to the Attorney General's office isn't of the complainants themselves. Creating a distance between the complainants and the response gives a better presentation of independence. But more importantly, what the council is presenting and has discussed with us the possibility of going forward. As a matter of fact, that's what is scheduled on Monday, is to do interviews. And I think having interviews, particularly of all the people that were in that closed session, closes the loop in terms of what transpired.
Okay, so I hear that about me being the one to make that complaint, but the two documents are the two documents, and what are in those two documents is that's not going to change whether we hire a lawyer or not. And is there, I don't know what if there's a penalty if we have violated Open Meetings Act. I'm just trying to weigh the pros and cons here, and the documents are what they are. And so providing those to the Attorney General unaltered, the way they are, what was discussed, and then allowing the Attorney General to make that decision. I don't think interviews are even required of this complaint because of the documentation of the two opinions.
Along that line, the two documents I'm sure will be provided. If not, we'll make sure that they are. And number two is that there is some dialogue that occurred in that closed session meeting that is not in either of those two documents. And that dialogue related to the assertion that there will be pay for representation that is not allowed.
Was that part of the complaint?
That's part of my complaint.
That was,
yes.
But was it part of my complaint regarding the Open
I have not
Meetings
seen
Act?
your complaint.
Okay, so it was, because I think when I made the complaint, I only made it regarding the two opinions, right? The two opinions and the fact that they were not pending or actual litigation, and that they should not have been discussed in closed session. So that was my complaint. So.
Okay, and so I think this will kind of combine a response to that, and it won't weaken either one.
So another question, Dr. Spalletta, you said that this is already in motion. It's already happening. The contract is signed with the law firm, but have they been told, we're reviewing these three complaints, I mean, to move forward? Is it gonna happen either way without our review?
No, I mean, the board president and I have talked about this the last couple of days, but I mean, it doesn't have to if you don't want to.
It is something that we could stop if we so desire, but it is something that needs to be reviewed by the board. And so if the manner that we thought we'd take it up, and we bring it to the board, we review it, and if there's no objection, or if there's a consensus to go forward, we will go forward. and that is in effect an approval. So if I'm going to bring it up as if there's no objection, or if there's consensus, we will go forward with having them do the representation. If there is objection and no consensus, then it puts us at substantial risk of not meeting the time frame that's necessary, that's being required by the Attorney General's office. Okay. It also puts us in the position of, because both Serena and I are authors of those complaints, of not being to the level of independence. Although the evidence itself, I agree with Serena, it pretty much speaks for itself. But I do think that adding the independence of a counsel and the documentation of interviews to substantiate this would be beneficial for the district.
Okay. And so this is just for these 3 complaints, and if the board so chooses, we could ask for proposals further on down the road. And is there a conflict if Walsh Gallegos on the contract, it says they're representing Cobre Consolidated Schools, not Cobre Consolidated Board? So is there a conflict, like if something were to arise where it was the board versus the school district, what would happen then?
The conflict of the board versus the school district isn't one of, it shouldn't appear as something that would come forward in a challenge, because the board has one voice, and that is the voice that is communicated by the majority. Those in opposition of that wouldn't be construed to be representative of the board. The other part is that going forward, the issues related to consultations are the only ones that are covered under this policy. The consultations for investigations for personnel actions, the consultations for things that we're asked to review that we don't have the expertise inside, come to the board so that we can assure that these are services that we are needed, that are needed, and that we're not overexpending. Last year we budgeted $20,000 for legal fees, and we spent over $100,000 for legal fees. This is to prevent that kind of expenditure and use of services that may not be needed. It may be perfectly legitimate, every dollar that was spent, but we never really got the opportunity to review that. So that is what we're doing here. We're bringing it forward, and I think then we should proceed with either taking any objection, any further objection to this, or all those that are in consensus to do that can indicate by saying aye.
We haven't had a motion.
It isn't the motion.
Oh, so we don't have to act on it? It's
No.
under action item.
That's correct. Let's go ahead and make it a motion to work that way. Avoid any further trouble. So do I have a motion to go forward with Walsh & Gallegos to represent us in the representation Attorney General's office complaints, as well as the one letter of demand letter issued?
So moved.
And I'll second it.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Any public input outside of this that are not related to the agenda? Okay. Oh, I do have public input. One thing is that last meeting, I received a text from somebody that stated that there were, I believe she said 24 people that were observing online, but it was on the YouTube. Evidently, it was on the YouTube mode or venue. And they weren't, the chat or the comment options were not allowed under that format. And the reason I was given that was that way is that one, there was some concern about the comments could be something that would cause YouTube to start not allowing us to put their put our meetings in their forum. That one I was less concerned about, but what I was concerned about is that the comments can continue to be provided after the meeting's over, and we wouldn't be able to respond to them, and there might be some expectation that that they would be responded to. So alternatively, what we're going to do is continue to push the use of Google Meet as the venue, a preferred venue for people to participate in. This way we'll see the people that are participating, and they can raise their hand and we'll be able to respond to it. And not only that, all the people that are participating in this forum, then we'll be able to see that. And the object is that the objective is for transparency, and that does provide the level that I hope we are striving to meet. But this is just an open meetings comment on my part. The board may at some point, or any citizen may at some point request for this to be on the agenda to have an extensive discussion. But so that's my input for this session. Okay, not seeing any other. Victor, Daniel? Okay, then we are skipping items number 5 and 6, and I'll now take a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Done. Thank you very much. 5:25.
You guys have a great weekend.
You
See
did
you
the same. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
Bye.